History of Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a German politician and leader of the Nazi Party. He was born in Austria in 1889 and rose to power in Germany during the 1930s. Hitler's policies led to World War II and the Holocaust, in which millions of people, particularly Jews, were persecuted, tortured, and killed. Hitler's ideology was based on the belief in the superiority of the Aryan race and the need to eliminate all other groups deemed inferior, particularly Jewish people. He used propaganda, intimidation, and violence to achieve his goals, and his regime was responsible for the deaths of millions of people. Hitler's reign of terror came to an end in 1945 when Germany was defeated in World War II. He died by suicide in his bunker in Berlin as Allied forces closed in on the city. Today, Hitler is widely regarded as one of the most evil and destructive figures in human history. Adolf Hitler was a German politician and leader of the Nazi Party. He rose to power as Chancellor of Germany in 1933 and later Führer in 1934. Hitler's aggressive foreign policies led to the outbreak of World War II in Europe, and he oversaw numerous war crimes, including the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were systematically murdered. Hitler's ideology was based on anti-Semitism, racism, and nationalism, which he combined with a desire for Lebensraum, living space, for the German people. His regime implemented policies of persecution and violence against Jews, Romani people, homosexuals, people with disabilities, and others deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. Hitler's leadership and the policies of his regime ultimately led to the deaths of millions of people, both during World War II and in the Holocaust. After Germany's defeat in the war, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker in Berlin in 1945, as Allied forces closed in on the city. Adolf Hitler was a German politician and leader of the Nazi Party. He was born in Austria in 1889 and rose to power as Chancellor of Germany in 1933. Hitler's aggressive foreign policies led to the outbreak of World War II, and he was responsible for the systematic persecution and genocide of millions of people, including Jews, Romani people, homosexuals, disabled individuals, and others considered undesirable by the Nazi regime. Hitler's regime also oversaw the establishment of concentration and extermination camps, where millions of people were imprisoned, tortured, and killed. Hitler's ideology of Aryan supremacy and his hatred of Jews and other minorities contributed to some of the most horrific atrocities in human history. Hitler's reign ended with his suicide in 1945 as Allied forces closed in on Germany. His legacy remains a subject of ongoing debate and study, as scholars seek to understand the factors that contributed to his rise to power and the atrocities committed under his regime. Adolf Hitler was a German politician and leader of the Nazi Party. He was born on April 20, 1889, in Austria-Hungary and died on April 30, 1945, in Berlin, Germany. Hitler rose to power in Germany in the early 1930s, and his regime was responsible for the genocide of millions of people during World War II, including Jews, Romani people, disabled individuals, homosexuals, and others. This systematic extermination of these groups is now known as the Holocaust. Hitler's leadership style was authoritarian and his beliefs were based on a twisted version of nationalism, racism, and anti-Semitism. He believed in the superiority of the Aryan race and sought to create a new order in Europe that would be dominated by Germany. He also pursued an aggressive foreign policy that ultimately led to World War II. Hitler's regime was responsible for countless atrocities, including the invasion of Poland, the Blitzkrieg, the Holocaust, and numerous war crimes. He committed suicide on April 30, 1945, as Allied forces closed in on Berlin and Germany surrendered shortly thereafter, ending World War II. Hitler's legacy is one of the most infamous in human history, and his actions continue to have a profound impact on the world today. Adolf Hitler was a German politician and leader of the Nazi Party. He rose to power as Chancellor of Germany in 1933 and later Führer in 1934. Hitler's aggressive foreign policies led to the outbreak of World War II in Europe, and his pursuit of the final solution resulted in the genocide of 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. Hitler's regime was responsible for the deaths of millions of people, including those who were considered undesirable by the Nazis, such as homosexuals, disabled individuals, and members of other minority groups. Hitler's leadership and ideology are widely regarded as one of the most devastating and destructive forces in human history. Hitler's life and habits. Hitler's personal life had grown more relaxed and stable with the added comfort that accompanied political success. After his release from prison, he often went to live on the Obersalzberg, near Berchtesgaden. His income at this time was derived from party funds and from writing for nationalist newspapers. He was largely indifferent to clothes and food but did not eat meat and gave up drinking beer and all other alcohols. His rather irregular working schedule prevailed. He usually rose late, sometimes dawdled at his desk, and retired late at night. At Berchtesgaden, his half-sister Angela Raubal and her 2 daughters accompanied him. Hitler became devoted to one of them, Geli, and it seems that his possessive jealousy drove her to suicide in September 1931. For weeks Hitler was inconsolable. Some time later Eva Braun, a shop assistant from Munich, became his mistress. Hitler rarely allowed her to appear in public with him. He would not consider marriage on the grounds that it would hamper his career. Braun was a simple young woman with few intellectual gifts. Her great virtue in Hitler's eyes was her unquestioning loyalty, and in recognition of this he legally married her at the end of his life. Dictator, 1933-39. Once in power, Hitler established an absolute dictatorship. He secured the president's assent for new elections. The Reichstag fire, on the night of February 27, 1933, apparently the work of a Dutch communist, Marinus van der Lubbe, provided an excuse for a decree overriding all guarantees of freedom and for an intensified campaign of violence. In these conditions, when the elections were held, March 5, the Nazis polled 43.9% of the votes. On March 21 the Reichstag assembled in the Potsdam Garrison Church to demonstrate the unity of National Socialism with the old conservative Germany, represented by Hindenburg. 2 days later the enabling bill, giving full powers to Hitler, was passed in the Reichstag by the combined votes of Nazi, Nationalist, and Centre Party deputies, March 23, 1933. Less than 3 months later all non-Nazi parties, organizations, and labor unions ceased to exist. The disappearance of the Catholic Centre Party was followed by a German concordat with the Vatican in July. Hitler had no desire to spark a radical revolution. Conservative ideas were still necessary if he was to succeed to the presidency and retain the support of the army. Moreover, he did not intend to expropriate the leaders of industry, provided they served the interests of the Nazi state. Ernst Röhm, however, was a protagonist of the continuing revolution. He was also, as head of the SA, distrusted by the army. Hitler tried first to secure Röhm's support for his policies by persuasion. Hermann Göring and Heinrich Himmler were eager to remove Röhm, but Hitler hesitated until the last moment. Finally, on June 29, 1934, he reached his decision. On the night of the Long Knives, Röhm and his lieutenant Edmund Heinz were executed without trial, along with Gregor Strasser, Kurt von Schleicher, and others. The army leaders, satisfied at seeing the SA broken up, approved Hitler's actions. When Hindenburg died on August 2, the army leaders, together with Papen, assented to the merging of the chancellorship and the presidency, with which went the supreme command of the armed forces of the Reich. Now officers and men took an oath of allegiance to Hitler personally. Economic recovery and a fast reduction in unemployment, coincident with world recovery, but for which Hitler took credit, made the regime increasingly popular, and a combination of success and police terror brought the support of 90% of the voters in a plebiscite. Hitler devoted little attention to the organization and running of the domestic affairs of the Nazi state. Responsible for the broad lines of policy, as well as for the system of terror that upheld the state, he left detailed administration to his subordinates. Each of these exercised arbitrary power in his own sphere, but by deliberately creating offices and organizations with overlapping authority, Hitler effectively prevented any one of these particular realms from ever becoming sufficiently strong to challenge his own absolute authority. Foreign policy claimed his greater interest. As he had made clear in Mein Kampf, the reunion of the German peoples was his overriding ambition.